thank you everybody for coming. Sorry for the slight delay. It's possible, I hear that there might be another slight delay if there's a bit of an electrical outage, but it doesn't sound like it'll be for a long time. If so, so be patient. Buenos dias a todos. And we have a real full agenda, so we'll get started pretty quickly here. I'll turn the conversation over to Alexandra, and we're managing the slides remotely, so you'll hear us talking a little bit. If during the meeting there are questions from the audience, from Spanish speakers in the audience, it is possible for the translator to translate those from my headset. So you can feel free to ask if you have questions. And with that, go to the next slide. And Alexandra, do you want to take it from there?
Yes. So welcome everybody in Costa Rica and remotely with our different time zones. So this is VSIG for one more time in plenary 23. And I will start with an introduction of for new participants. Then Gwen will talk. Gwen Moncoafe will talk to us about the latest achievements and activities of the iAdopt group. After that, Clement will talk about the metadata task group and the updates they have. Later on, the FAIR mapping working group activities will be described, starting off with Nico Matenzoglu, who will talk about the SESOM framework in 7 minutes, and then Jan will continue, Jan Lefranc, with the FAIR mapping group updates. And finally, we will actually have a working session led by John Graybill to identify and prioritize evaluation methods for choosing terms and ontologies. This will last 50 minutes, and we will, us that we are remotely, will be taken to breakout rooms, and you there, you will be working with John. Next one, Julian. So just a little housekeeping for all the attendees. There are collaborative notes. I will post them again in the chat, where it's good for you to add your name and affiliation and email. The session is being recorded. There will be time for questions after each talk. So participants in the room ask questions using the microphone, while the virtual ones, please ask questions on the chat, starting with the name of the presenter, and follow that with your question. Next one. So initially, I wanted to talk about the vocabulary semantic services interest group and who we are. Next slide, Julian. So it is a group that is all about semantics and semantic artifacts, which is very, very much highlighted and got a lot of momentum from the FAIR guiding principles, especially the I of the FAIR, the interoperability. And even more specific, the I2 of the FAIR that mandates that metadata and data should use vocabularies that follow the FAIR principles. And that's why several task forces, groups, and projects have been created focusing on the semantic artifacts and their fairness. Next one, please. So the VSIG was created initially in 2015, and it currently has 4 co-chairs: Jan Lefranc, that joined in 2017, John Graybill joined in 2017, myself that joined in 2020, and Julian that joined in 2022. We have had regular plenary sessions since the RDA plenary 14, think we only missed the RDA P22 that was fully remote. And we are back here in Costa Rica and remotely in a hybrid session for our session again. Next one, please.
Can I ask Eduardo to make the presentation full screen if he can? We're seeing all the controls at the moment. The shared screen should be full screen. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. So our vision is to harmonize our ways of working with semantic web technologies. And the way to do that is through knowledge and expertise exchange across all domains. So really our interest group is a platform to exchange knowledge in order to manage to harmonize what we do and how we do it. If you want to join the group, there is a link, or you just go to the RDA and look for the VC group and join it. Currently, our group has a working group that was iAdopt, but currently the iAdopt is in maintenance mode. It has task groups, so they are unofficial, they are not very formal, and they don't have to have a deliverable. So that's the minimum metadata task group that Clement will talk about their updates, and the terms and concept recommendations that will monopolize today's session by John Graybill. And there is a bird of feather for the FAIR mappings that Jan will talk to you in a bit. As a final slide, again, it's all about collaboration. We are looking to collaborate with other RDA working groups and interest groups that have something to do with semantics and semantic artifacts. We are looking forward to working with you who are in the room and participate remotely, and of course with projects that utilize semantics or are in need of semantics and their interoperability and fairness. Thank you. And with that, I'll give the floor to Gwen.
Can we get the AV person to change the presentation so we're not seeing the controls, do you think?
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Alexandra. So I'm going to talk to you about the latest achievement and activities of the iAdopt working group. Huh? Oh, next slide, please. So the RDA iAdopt working group was born from VSEG and before 2019. So it was created in 2019, and we had our 18 months working plan spanning from until 2021. We are now in maintaining deliverable mode, and we are still very active. So the iAdopt working group was about the interoperability of the description of observable property terminologies. So we wanted to address the interoperability bit of FAIR by enabling interoperability between existing terminologies used for variable naming, and also by promoting the use of FAIR terminologies to annotate research data with well-identified, unambiguous, and machine-readable vocabularies. So sorry. The group was led by 4 co-chairs, Barbara Magagna, myself, and Anusuria Deveraju, and Maria Stoica, representing different countries and different continents as well. And also we had a very active core group, and we couldn't have done the work without that very active core group. So it's been an amazing teamwork, really. And in this core group, there was in particular Circo Schindler and Alison Pamment. So we produce our outcomes, which are the RDA endorsed recommendations. And we also created an IADOP ontology, and we've got a GitHub repository to enable us to share and invite comments and input from other people outside of our own working group. Next slide, please. So the key IADOP recommendation are five of them. That the description for variables should be human and machine readable. They should be explicit and sufficient. They should use semantic artifacts. They should use preferably the IADOP ontology and able to have this common ontology framework and reuse IADOP aligned terminology as much as possible. Next slide, please. So this is two versions of the IADOP ontology. The one on the top is the one we started with, which was very simple, well, they're both very simple, actually. The first one was just dealing purely with the variable itself. So a variable has one and only one property. It can have a number of entities related to it, which have roles, and those roles can be an object of interest, only one object of interest, a matrix, only one matrix, or a context object, which is not mandatory, it's optional. And it can also have constraints, and those constraints must constrain entities if they are mentioned. So they must be related to an entity constraint as well. And the extension we created a few months after the first version was to actually deal with the use case of aggregated variables. Next slide, please. I won't go too much into details. There's plenty of information that can be accessed if need be. So really, just to give the highlights of the latest activities. So the big one really that happened is that we created the IADOP, or we ran an IADOP challenge, and we just have our IADOP's working group session there where we actually discuss some of the outcomes from this challenge. It's still outcomes that we are going to carry on working on for the next few months. So I will mention more about it in the next few slides, but we also have regular meetings to discuss implementation priorities, etc. It can be ad hoc or it can be regular. We've got ongoing work related to the IADOP adoption at the research infrastructure level, in particular as part of European projects. Also opportunity to test interoperability in real case scenario, like for example, during Android Hub Next, as part of the Android Hub Next European project. We also are interacting with other working groups, but in particular the fair mapping working group, which is just started, and it is of great interest to us. We also received some interest in IADOP becoming an OGC standard, and that in a way that's what triggered the IADOP challenge. We wanted to really test the IADOP recommendation to its in real case scenarios. And there is also activities related to service development for annotation, which Barbara is involved in quite a few projects that will be dealing with that. And we're looking forward to see the outcome of that. And then we've got activities related to method and protocols as well, which is not, it's a bit of an add-on to, it's not part of IADOP, but it's an interest that inevitably needs to be tackled at some stage. And it's an extension to the IADOP framework to some extent. Next slide, please. So the IADOP variable modeling challenge, it happened over the last couple of months. 24 people participated, 16 groups, different domains, all were data scientists. The purpose was to reveal the similarities and the differences in the way people use IADOP to describe the same set of variables. So we had 30 variables in total, and people were selecting variables they wanted to model. So the outcome, opportunity to improve the framework and create some guidelines, provide insight to develop a semi-automated IADOP variable annotation service. Next slide, please. I'm going to go quickly through it because I'm conscious of the time. So there was 2 parts in that challenge. The first part was dealing with all 30 variables, sorry, and the 10 best were counted for the scoring. And the second challenge was only selecting 10 variables, so a subset of those 30 variables that had showed quite a lot of variability in the modeling, and we wanted to provide some more guidelines and see how people fared with it. And next slide, please. So this was the different the feedback we received from the participants. So a number of reasons why they found iAdopt useful. I won't go through all of them for the sake of time. And then modeling challenges, they define it difficult, well, challenging to get the correct modeling. Finding terminologies was time consuming, and also understanding some of the variable. Next slide, please. So this was just a slide to acknowledge the input from the different people. So it was really led tremendously by Barbara Magagna, put a lot of effort into that challenge. And and thanks to that, we're having a very good set of variables to work with. But also we had external reviewers. So I'd like to thank all the people on that list, obviously. And also we had external reviewers, Marcus Stoker, John Graybill, and Rob Atkinson, who helped a lot as well with scoring the result and analyzing the result. Next slide, please. So I think this is just to say there are links on that page. We produce a lot of material for the challenge, which could help other people. So please use those resources, give us some feedback. Anything you don't understand, get in touch. And we're really interested in continue improving and continue trying to reach better interoperability at the variable level. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pass this one. That's the result. There are a few links on those slides that people can go to if need be. Next slide, please. So this is the result of the challenge. All the winners, we got support from Tiger, RDA Tiger, to support some of the prizes, but also some support from GoFair and Mabablu and other organizations who provided money prizes for the winners. And this is my last slide. And congratulations to all the winners, and many, many thanks to all the participants, because this was a big effort, and it's extremely valuable to have those results. So thank you very much.
Alexandra, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. And this one is from Clement, who is going to talk to us about the updates on the metadata for ontology description and publication ontology. Clement, you're here.
Yes, thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, everyone. Nice to be in the room with that camera settings. I like feeling that I'm seeing the scene and I'm with you guys. So my name is Clément Jonquet. I'm working at INRAE, and I'm also involved in VSIG for quite a long time now, not since the very beginning, but quite a long time. Part of the action I've been doing in this group with periods with up and downs, depending also on who's working on something and which projects are also pushing for that. The activity, the most important, the activities that I've been mostly leading or participating in was that metadata task group that is sometimes called differently, ontology metadata task group or minimum metadata, ontology metadata, whatever. But the core aspect of this group was to develop or put up something that we call the metadata for ontology description and publication ontology. So in other words, an ontology about ontology. And we started this work about 6-7 years ago now. And I just wanted to give you a brief update in 3-4 slides of the things that have been done recently in this context, mostly in the context of the project called Fair Impact, which is a European project in which we are part of the EOSC roadmap in Europe, the European Open Science Cloud. And in this project, we have a package on ontologies and metadata in which we are interested in being sure that semantic artifacts are developed and designed as fair objects. And so we are working on multiple aspects of that, including the fact of describing them with the right metadata. So yeah, the main focus of MOD was really to develop a standard vocabulary to describe semantic artifacts. So in that sentence, it's a little hard. I avoid ontology of ontology by just saying that we are building a standard vocabulary that we call MOD. And that standard vocabulary is used to describe other vocabularies, terminologies, ontologies, thesauri, etc., that we call semantic artifacts. Next slide, please. So historically, MOD was like a proposition to be an extension of DCAT or extension or profile of DCAT 2 at that time. Now we might consider moving to DCAT 3 when it's a recommendation. It was presented several times at the VSIG, and if you look into historical presentation, you'll find some. But here, this is a quick recall of our core model that is based on DCAT. So if you're familiar with DCAT, you'll see that here we are extending DCAT, the notion of data set, with an object that we call semantic artifact. And if for each of object of DCAT, we are extending DCAT with objects that are relevant for describing either semantic artifact, their catalogs, or the services serving them, or sometime in that case, their distribution in multiple formats or distribution. So, and as I said, we are targeting or using the term semantic artifact to describe any kind of semantic artifact as described in the parentheses there. So basically that model was kind of established about 3-4 years ago in the context of some work done also in the context of FAIR and RDA. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show you a little bit what were the news recently done in the context of FAIR impact. I mean, oh, sorry, no, that one was an example before. It looks a little bit complex, but if you can stay on the example, it's okay. That example show that we are extending DCAT in yellow with blue cells with MOD. And if you look into the green example, those are example instances of those classes. So typically the idea here you see would be, for example, to have the distribution of an ontology called CODO, that is an ontology for example, COVID-19, and that CODO owl distribution will be a distribution object. That CODO will be released as a distribution, available as a distribution in OWL, but is also existing as an OWL ontology, which is a subclass of semantic artifact. And semantic artifact services will include, for example, bioportal or agroportal. They have API for that. And those catalogs will actually include those vocabularies. And for each of those catalog, for each of these semantic artifact catalog, we'll have a specific record describing the metadata of, for example, CODO here. So this is just to show you where we put the instances in the diagram. And if I move to the next slide, we'll tell you quickly about the things that have been done in the context of FAIR impact in these in MOD. So that will be the next slide, please. Yeah. Now we are moving to MOD 3.2, and MOD 3.2 is the same in terms of model, but we had multiple design issues that were complex in MOD 2 that we discuss again with folks and experts in FAIR impact and took a few decisions on it. And now we have stabilized the numbers, the properties, and the type of properties that are available to describe each object in MOD. So the role of MOD is really to provide you with metadata properties that you can use to describe your objects. And originally, we were only describing the notion of semantic artifact distribution and semantic artifact. Now we have extended also to describe semantic artifact catalog and semantic artifact catalog record and semantic artifact service. So all of those properties, if you see them, if you can zoom on your screen, you will see them. Those are like properties either coming from standard vocabularies, Dublin Core, VOV, DC term, Dublin Core, I just said it's already, PROV, things like that. And also in some cases, when this is appropriate and when this is needed, we also brand a property in the namespace of MOD. And so now there is a fair impact deliverable called for specification of a semantic artifact description that you'll find more details about MOD version 3 and even version 3.2 now online. And so this is where we are now. We are with the capacity of describing semantic artifact catalog. We are now also capable of providing or using MOD to describe the catalog themselves that we are building in multiple groups. Like for example, in my groups, we are working with an OntoPortal instance called AgroPortal, and we would like to be able to describe ourselves, the catalog itself, with MOD. And so what we are doing now in the context of fair impact and a little bit connected to that task is the next slide, please, showing us that we are now using MOD to propose a specification of an API for semantic artifact catalogs. So semantic artifact catalogs is a term for ontology repositories, vocabulary service, terminology service, all of those tools that you can connect to access libraries and registries of semantic artifacts. And what we have done in that deliverable called 4.3 here is that we have specified all of the calls that would be appropriate for semantic artifact catalog to implement. And by specifying all the calls, we said, oh, if you want to participate, or if you want to be compliant with that API, implement those calls and be sure that the object that you returned will be described either in a semantic web standard such as OWL or SCOS or by MOD itself. And now this is available on GitHub. We are starting up these, and one way of the specification describe the HTTP calls that you need to do, explain that the object shall rely on RDF, OWL, SCOS, and MOD, as I said, and it also as MOD give it, the list of metadata properties that you should return, but also being in a semantic web vision or open world assumption, you can also describe your object with other metadata properties that are not covered in MOD and still implement the API. But of course, if you do have a property such as, I don't know, the name, the license, or the acronym in your own semantic artifact catalog, then the idea will be to map that to the MOD property. And the promotion that we are doing right now is an open call that we have in the context of Fair Impact, where we are explicitly contacting semantic artifact catalog providers to tell them, come over, implement that API with us. You're being paid to do that a little bit, but you're being paid. And after that, we'll have multiple implementation of that API. Will probably improve the API working all together also, because we are sure that Fair Impact may have done some, what we have produced is improvable, and we'll improve that, make it a shared API that multiple semantic artifact catalogs implement, and then seeing the way semantic artifact catalogs are interoperable. It was probably my last slide, I think. So please come over, check out the open call and join us in that initiative.
Thank you very much, Clement. Very important work. Very good for all of us to center around that and describe our catalogs in a standardized way. So with that, we are taking you to the SESOM guide from Nico Matenzoglu. So Nico, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexandra. All right, yeah, I'm going to give you a very, very brief primer of SESOM and hopefully incentivize some of you to join our Fair Mappings working group where SESOM is a little bit of a core starting point for our work. So let's go to the next slide. So let's first start. What are we talking about here? We're talking about entity mappings. An entity in the sense of SESOM is any kind of symbol, like a code in a terminology, a class in an ontology, a permissible value in a data model, an identifier in a database, and so on, or even just a string that is intended to refer to a real-world thing. Like, for example, here you can see the string Friedrich's ataxia or the OMOP identifier, both referring to the concept of Friedrich's ataxia. And when we say a mapping, an entity mapping, what we mean is a correspondence relation between those two symbols. Next slide. So a SESOM-style semantic entity mapping looks very simply like this. You have like a subject in the mapping, which can be described using an identifier, a label, and so on. an object in the same way, and you have, importantly, a predicate, which is typically sourced from the SCOS mapping relation vocabulary, such as SCOS exact match, which needs to be specified. But furthermore, we also specify justifications for those mappings, which are actually required. So you have to say things like, this mapping is justified by, for example, a human that looked at it and said, yes, this is a correct mapping, or it's justified by a lexical matching process that has determined that these should be mapped because, for example, the label and the exact synonym is matching. Next slide. Generally, we aim to provide a simple model to capture mapping evidence and provenance. So our most popular format is table format, but we also have other kind of formats, but it's nice for illustration purposes. So you can see in the bottom a table which has like the typical provenance information for the mapping, but you can also say things about the entire mapping set that can be injected straight into the table in a standard manner, such as, for example, an identifier for the mapping or a license constraint. Next slide. So in terms of what kinds of mappings are covered, we recently have provided some support for lexical to identifier mappings in SASM as well, which are things like, for example, the string adenofibroma is linked to the Mondo and specific Mondo identifiers. But the primary use case of SASM was always identifier to identifier mappings, like, for example, between two ontology classes or between two database identifiers. We also have a proposal, an experimental, non-official proposal for mapping complex concepts, especially in ontologies. For example, a pre-coordinated concept like hypertensive heart disease without congestive heart failure can be described in a set of different terms, and how would we put that into a mapping set? Next slide. But very importantly, SASM has not been designed to capture data structure mappings and schema crosswalks, which is where our fair mappings working group here at RDA will come in. So tasks like, for example, you have a person in one data space that is described using a name like Chris Mungle, and you want to kind of like translate this into a different schema, like, for example, one that separates by a given name and a family name, then this is not something that is in scope for the current way that SASM works. However, some subparts of this, like, for example, how the properties map to each other, this is very much in scope for SASM. So building something like this that works for crosswalks is a part of our working group goals. And one proposal that we will examine is the LinkML map that you can also check out if you like. Next slide. So our overarching goal, of course, is to, so we have recognized as a community that entity mappings are the glue of the web of research data. So we produce research data in various silos, and we need to link those silos together. So this is what we consider a very, very important part of getting this research data connected. But we've also recognized that curating mappings is hard and expensive. So what we wish to do and what we wish to promote as part of our working group is to build a global community of practice that shares interoperable mappings and develops shared curation and metadata practices. And ideally, what we want is for them to come together and publish their mappings in a standardized registry format so that we can share our mappings in a standard manner and also share QC standard procedures and similar across various registries. Next slide. So recently, with the help of 79 community members contributing more than 1,000 comments and 150 pull requests and over 13 releases, we, in the past 4 years, we have finally stabilized SASM in version 1.0 in August 2024. So you can now safely start implementing it in your systems. And the community has already provided 2 working implementation, which are SASM Java and SASM Pi. And you can check out any more details here at the release notes or at our documentation pages. Next slide, please. So lastly, just quickly some acknowledgements. So while a lot of the work that has happened in order to get to 1.0 was done by volunteers. Some of them are here in this room. Some of them are, I can see them here in the chat, even have contributed quite a lot of expertise to the standard. A lot of it has also been funded by various groups like Phenomics First, Monarch Grants, some Bosch gift to LBNL and the DARPA Young faculty award grants. I just want to say that quickly. And I want to incentivize you all hopefully to join our Fair Mappings working group to continue to working on this a bit, learn about SASM, do a basic training. You can scan the QR code if you want to get to the materials, study the documentation, potentially start publishing entity mappings in the SASM format and share them with our working group so that we can examine them and add them to our use cases. And also maybe even set up a SASM compliant mapping registry for your community and promote further uptake of the standard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nico. Very important work as well. And thank you for keeping the time limits as well. So great timing. And with that, I'll give the floor to Jan to talk us about the Fair Mappings working group. Fair mapping or fair mappings?
Fair mappings. There's a typo here. Sorry.
Okay.
So thank you, Nico, for the introduction. I think you made it very exciting to actually join the Fair Mappings working group. Maybe we can go to the next slide, please. So I just want to talk about this Fair Mapping working group. It's one of the new working groups. We're still under review of the TAB, so we're not yet endorsed, but the idea of this working group and the work that Nico described started 2 years ago in the context of a European context of the Fair Impact project, where we identify that mapping is one of the key issues any community will have to deal with when we start working with information systems. And that idea also was picked up and developed in the FairCore for EOSC project, which is a sister project to Fair Impact, where it was clearly identified that we need registries to store these mappings so that actually we can access them and work on them. Because as Nico said, mapping is an extensive amount of work, it's expensive, so it's best to reuse to actually reduce the cost of making these mappings and help communities that do not have the resource to do it to reuse them. So the way we started this is discussing internally within the project. We had several workshops, and we also organized with FairCore for EOSC and my colleague Younes, who's also the co-chair of the Fair Mapping Working Group, as 2 sessions in the RDA Plenary 21 in Vienna, where we started discussing with the communities about the mappings and the problem of mappings and how we can make them fair and so on. And next slide, please. And what we got is a lot, no, that was good, the previous one. We got lots of community feedback during the 2 sessions. And one of the feedback we got is you should start an RDA working group. And that's what we did. So thanks to the support of RDA Tiger, and I really would like to acknowledge the Tiger team because they are fantastic. They have been helping us setting up this working group. So next slide, please. So where are we now? So we have a charter, which is public now. It's on the RDA website, so you can have a look. We're still under review, so it's not yet endorsed. We received TAB feedback. We need to answer to this feedback. There are minor changes, so it's not like a dramatic change of the charter, just some additional information that was requested, which has actually were very good comments. So we're in the process of doing that. But while we were waiting for the endorsement process, we decided that we should still keep working because there is a lot of energy and need. So we organized a bird of a feather session, last RDA plenary meeting, and we are organizing another session that I'm doing to advertise tomorrow at 10 for Costa Rica in time, where the idea is we want to discuss some of the initial discussions we had in first working meetings we organized in November with the community. Next slide, please. So the problem that are addressed by these working groups is that the fact that mapping are hard to find and reuse. That's a common statement. So for the community of SASM already coming up from biomedical, that is becoming easier, but for many other communities and domains, it's still not yet the case. So many times they are scattered across version control systems like GitHub, and they are hard to find because they are not really easy to find on GitHub, right? There's no metadata actually to actually find them. And these mappings are often expressed in formats not meant for automated processing, and they often also lack the information that was showed by Nico, which is essential, which is the predicate that actually links the 2 concepts. They are usually simple 2-column tables, and we can make the assumption that it means that they are exact match or the same, right? And another thing that we encountered during the 2.5 years of work in Fair Impact is like, while talking about mappings, we realized that not everybody agrees on the definition of mappings. And in the end, we ended up understanding that there are lots of different types of mappings. But for now, everybody is called mappings, which is very ambiguous in discussions and can lead to a lot of, wasted discussions, because if things were clear enough, then it would make things easier. So next slide, please.
Jan,
So-
can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You
That's
have,
my last
you-
slide.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So the idea of the working group, based on these facts, is that we would like to actually leverage the outputs of the Fair Impact projects and Fair Call for IOSC, in particular, recommendations and technical recommendations on how to make this mapping fair, right? And the idea is that these recommendations are going to come out as a deliverable at the end of the project. But clearly, there will be some more work that needs to be done with the international community. So that's why we're going to have them as a part of the group activity. But the core thing is to actually try to collect as many use cases of existing mappings so that we can understand the different types of mappings that already exist and how we can apply the recommendations to make them fair, and use these mapping collections to actually make a classification of mapping to clarify the different types of mapping. So for instance, Nico was talking about entity mappings. There are other mappings like data mapping, API mappings. So the idea is to create a classification on which we can agree upon. And so it makes things easier to communicate. And with this use case, the idea is to actually come up with a generic exchange model and the associated metadata based on SESAM, which is why we had Nico presenting SESAM. It's like we would like to extend and work with the SESAM structure because we believe it's the best structure out there, and it's very easy to actually use. And once we get all these things, the idea would be to collect that into what we call a knowledge base. We don't know the format yet, but we want to make this information available out there so that people that are facing the mapping problem, they can go there and find examples of mappings, find solutions, and find the recommendation they should apply for their own mapping. And I'll stop there. Join us at the session at 10 a.m. Costa Rican time, so 16 UTC. And of course, the working group is open to any RDA member or willing people and experts to join to do the work. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Great job. We are right on schedule for our exciting interactive session. And yes, good. We're on the next slide. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we're going to describe a little bit about the project that the session is helping, and then we will move into 4 breakouts. This room will be, I believe, a part of breakout room 1, unless I get corrected. And we'll cover all this as we go through the slides. So the project we have started calling Ontologies is about evaluations for choosing terms and ontologies, how you choose terms and ontologies to use. The project goals are to collaboratively document the evaluation criteria for choosing terms and ontologies, and hopefully to provide proof of concept demonstrations, examples, a framework, a model for these criteria so that they can be applied together and mix and match and so forth. We've done a lot of work to date. There's a significant working document with a robust outline. The QR code will take you directly to that. Many other paths will also take you to that. There's a GitHub site that's in development that gives you a bit of an overview. There's also a fairly nice web page that is coming along there, listed at the bottom. Done a couple of posters and presentations you can see on the website. We have regular bi-weekly meetings, Slack, Drive. We're organized like a real funded project, but without funding. Next slide. So this is the team that is currently making up the Ontologies project. We started with one of us, and then we added a few more in the succeeding years, and then about a year ago, a lot of people started getting involved. So this is the group that is most regularly involved right now, and many of them will be facilitators in these breakout rooms that we're about to go into. So I just want to thank the whole team while we're here for all the support they've given in between all their day jobs. Thank you. Next slide. So what's going to happen here? Today, we're going to work together to improve the document. The breakout group, each breakout group will focus on its own particular section. This is definitely going to be an interactive exercise. You'll be bored if you're waiting for something exciting to happen in the room. The breakout discussions may organize or define or discuss the work, or may spend a lot of their time writing. It's not we have maybe 25 minutes in breakouts, so it's not a lot of time, but we hope to capture some of your knowledge and ideas in that time. You can contribute concretely with edits or additions or changes or comments to the breakout documents that we have, or you can just take notes. You can escribir en inglés o español. It's all going to be brought back together at the end. And so you come back together at the end, we'll have a 5-minute, very quick wrap-up session. And we will continue until about 10 after the half hour, given our late start. So go ahead, next slide. This is an overview of the working document, maybe a little small for especially those of you in the back, if you're not following along. The key part I want to speak to is the 4 categories of detailed criteria that can be used to make evaluations of terms and ontologies. I'll describe those categories a little bit more on the next slide, but for now, appreciate that those are where our 4 breakouts are. You will find links on this next slide that go to many of these other chapter headings as well. And if there's one there that you really want to look at, and that's one you want to work out, and by all means you can do that. They should all be writable by everybody. But let's go to the next slide. And so these are the major categories of evaluation criteria that we're talking about. There's the relevance category. This is a weed out. If you don't satisfy that category, your term or ontology isn't good, toss it, go on to the next one. So it asks whether the term addresses the necessary topics and has the necessary approval. Then there's popularity and reuse. Is this a well-used ontology? Does the community know about it? Has it been used by others a whole lot? Can be measured in a lot of different ways. There's best practices in analytics. Does the term or ontology follow best practices that these assets are supposed to follow? Do they have measured qualities that are useful and meet the needs of the user? That gets pretty complex, as you might imagine. And there's governance and internationalization. Does the maintenance process follow best practices? Is the term active or ontology actively maintained? Is there appropriate international content? So in all those 4 categories, we have an outline, we have the beginnings of some text in some cases, more text in other cases. You'll get to your page, your facilitator will start talking to you about it, and you can start writing right away, or you can coordinate with a facilitator to figure out what we should be writing. Maybe the organization doesn't make sense to you. Even if you're not experienced, these documents are supposed to be for anybody. So if there are things that are confusing, put a comment in there that says what's confusing. That will be very helpful to us. Next slide. Okay, concretely, we will have 4 breakout rooms. They will correspond to numbers 1 through 4 in that list I just gave you. The relevance group breakout will be in the main auditorium here. I will lead that. This room has simultaneous translation into Spanish. Other breakout rooms, therefore, the verbal part will be English speaking only. But if you want to go write some Spanish comments in, that's fine also. You can do that. So we encourage the remote English speakers to go to the other breakouts just to divide up the attendance a little bit so all the breakouts have some. If a breakout feels like it has a lot of people and you don't care much, try slipping into another one if you can. Writing in Spanish is welcome, as I mentioned earlier. It's all going to work just fine. Not simultaneously, but later. We'll pick it all up and address all the content. Next slide. So we hope to make the document better. We've already exposed you all to the project and its progress. Thank you for that. We're hoping you can find some things that are missing and say, hey, wait, you put a note in about a project you know about, or a method you know about, or something you wish there were a way to do. All of that's good. We're looking for these new perspectives from you. Create more opportunities to contribute to and improve the resource. If people find this is fun, you can keep doing it with us. Anyone can join. And if you are contributing, we want to be sure you get credit. So go through the process of putting your name at the top and initialing your work. Next slide. So you will decide which of those 4 facilitated topics, or another one, that you care about most. If you're remote, you go to that Zoom breakout session. It's my hope that our Zoom facilitator here in this room will go to session 1 if need be. And everyone should go to the corresponding shared document that will be on the next page. So you can work with your breakout group to make that section better. Can work alone, let the facilitator know, don't get in the way of other people. If you need a facilitator, choose one. If you contribute to the document, get your name and ORCID at the top of the document. And when the breakouts end, if you would stay for the 5 minutes for the final summary, that would be great, and to fill out a tiny survey. You can keep working on the documents after the session is complete. If you're in the middle of a thought, if you have another 3 hours, whatever, that's great. Keep working on it. We will be pulling the information together after the end of the week. So it's an open opportunity to put in your thoughts. Next slide. Okay, this is the list of breakout sessions and their links. You can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 are have the single star. They are facilitated by members of our team. And so you'll be going to the Zoom session and visiting the particular document if you have the computer with you. If you're here in the audience and you don't have a computer, you can follow along. I'll share my screen as we go along. So you can, to see this list and be able to just click on a link, if you don't want to type in bit.ly/ontochoice1 or 2 or 3 or 4, then you can type in bit.ly/ontochoice, save a whole character, and see the list and choose where you want to go. Yes, if you do want to go, if you're in the room and you want to go to a different breakout session, I'd ask that you step outside the room if you want to do any audio participation in that other breakout session, because I can hear everything all of you say. So that will be helpful to just go do it virtually somewhere else if you want to do that. I think that's the end of the excitement. Let's go to, does anybody need this up a little bit longer? Raise your hand if you need it up a bit longer.
I need something, John.
Hey, you go ahead.
So currently I have Handy on room 2, Anna Maria on room 3, and Azaya in room 4, but room 1 is not assigned to anybody. So I would need a name to assign it to.
Me.
What?
John. Room 1 is
To you.
me. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure there would be a room 1, so if there is, that's where we'll ask the.
Okay, so it's there. So they're all now assigned.
They're all assigned now?
Yep.
Yep, good. Thank you, Alexandra. Excellent. Everybody okay? Everybody follow that? Are there any questions? Okay, let's go to the next slide and let's enable the breakout rooms. Okay, so what we'll do is sorry, this is what we're going to do in my breakout, in breakout room 1. All of you who are interested in one of the other breakout rooms, this is the time to click on your link to go to your appropriate slide and choose in Zoom the breakout room of your choice. And I don't actually, if anybody can describe to me how to find the breakout room in my Zoom, I will like that.
The breakout rooms are open. It looks like.
Do we need to assign people to rooms randomly? Because I see such an option.
I say, oops, there. What about that?
You can either join or
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I found the option, so I think you should be able to choose one.
Yes, you can. So you click on the breakout room, it may be in your More menu. You click on the breakout rooms and it will bring up a list and you click on one of the items in that list.
John, I will also connect this audiovisuales unit that is showing on you to
Okay.
room 1. Okay.
Yes, I'm about to go into breakout room 1 on my laptop.
Okay, I assigned both the audiovisuales and yours. So I think I see Nikos has managed to join Azaya's group. If the participants in the Zoom can actually start joining rooms, or if you can't, please let us know.
Exactly.
Yeah. We can always put you where you want to be if you can't get there.
Yeah, John, can you share the slide with the, like, room 1 is relevance. Room 2, for example, is whatever it is. Can you share that slide that shows?
Go back one slide, please, or maybe two.
Yeah, allows people to know what to join. So chapter, just one slide back, I think, Julian.
John Grable's going to share his desktop. We put my shared desktop on screen here in the room. It says I'm sharing, but we're not seeing it in the room. Are you all seeing my shared desktop?
I see a slide saying relevance criteria breakout, what we will do. So that's number 1. But I would like to see 2, 3, and 4 so that people know where to join.
Yes, I would like to see that too. Is it Eduardo that's managing the slides? Either go back 2 slides or just show my shared screen. Oh, Julianne had the slides. Yes, Julianne, can you stop sharing?
Oh, yes.
That's the problem. Thank you. That's what I couldn't figure out.
Okay.
All right, now I'll try share screen again. But since I'm sharing, all right, I'm going to stop my sharing and reshare. Now it says participants can see our screen. We can't in the auditorium see it though. And can you all see it remotely? Looks like a Slack session at the moment until I get to that. Anne or Alexander, are you seeing my breakout session slide? Okay. I'm not sure why my shared screen isn't showing up in room, but I can't control it beyond just sharing my screen. So anybody in room having a problem so far other than the fact we're not there yet? Okay. I'm going to assume that everyone has had enough time to get to their breakout, and we're going to continue with breakout 1 here. Yep, I'm seeing it now. Thank you. But I will need our screen to get shared if you all aren't able to follow it yourself. Otherwise, I'll just talk you through what I'm doing. So I'm actually going to bit.ly onto choice 1, the relevance category group. And on that page, we have some useful links at the top. The participant list that I'll ask you all to add your names, and I see one of you at least is already doing that. Thank you. And we have the key thing, which is the content follows section, which is has 3 major categories. And I'm going to read the first sentence for those of you in the room so you know what we're talking about with relevance again. The relevance group of criteria are those criteria that establish firm requirements for an ontology or term, such that if the requirements are not met by a particular choice, that term or ontology cannot be used. And the reason, one of the reasons I created that is that, I was going to show you a picture, but I can't, so. But when we had to start presenting this in some sort of meaningful form as a diagram, it turned out that there was a weed out process that people generally used. And that was to say, these 97% ontologies are obviously totally useless to me. And so making that weed out process explicit was the goal of this first step of determining relevance. This is fascinating. Sorry if you aren't on screen, I'll still keep describing enough that you can follow along, because I'm going to be asking you all to help with questions and considerations. There are three major sections in the relevance group. There's the right topics and terms, or the matching criteria. That's, does it have the actual content, terminology content that I need? And we have a brief description here for an ontology. The right topic and necessary metadata criteria within an ontology involves matching precision, involves if there are multiple terms, how many of those get matched, how specialized the ontology is to that. Individual terms involves the level of semantic and administrative context that is considered in matching the process. And I'm seeing a good 8 of you on the page so far, so this is great. So we have some short information that's describing that, but that's probably the central part of how people weed out ontologies, and we really need to be able to say a little more about this. I'll say before I go to the next section that all three of these sections are describing criteria that also come up later. Once you've done the weed out process and you come back to say, well, I've got 4 ontologies that I might use now, how do I decide which one of these to use? You're still going to look at which have the most relevance in terms of their terms. You're still going to look at all 3 of these criteria, but they're not going to be weed out so much, they'll be factored in with other criteria. So the second major category here is required ontology structure criteria. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that, especially if you use like a tool like BioPortal, that many times these tools will offer analytics criteria and say, well, this ontology has very little depth. It only has 2 layers of depth, but it has 250,000 terms. And this ontology has, 150 terms, but they're all related to each other and it's really complex. So it's very much a web rather than a hierarchy. And this third one is very hierarchical. So these kinds of criteria are significant to certain users. Some people just want lists of terms. Some people want hierarchies. Some people want actual in-depth models. And so required ontology structure criteria is for those people who have a structure that is absolutely required by the user. For example, that the terms be incorporated within an appropriate branching hierarchy because they plan to navigate up and down the hierarchy. So that's the second category. The third category is community enforced selection criteria. This is where the community says, you have to use this ontology, or you have to use this set of ontologies, or you have to use ontologies that meet this criteria. So all of those are community enforced selection of criteria. Some communities have them, some communities get all hand wavy, some communities are not very concrete. These are relatively straightforward constraints and directly result in a rejection of the ontology if it doesn't meet the community's needs. But it is the case that we can still call them criteria that are essentially vote up, vote down based on what the community says. So a contribution that would be really useful here at the end of that section, and they all just have 3 paragraphs of text right now because none of us have started writing in this section to speak of. It would be really valuable if someone knew of a community that actually enforces ontology criteria and could just jot that down here. That would be a great contribution. similarly for the other two sections, we're looking for people who are knowledgeable about an actual use case, something like that. So let me just review those three major sections and get a little dialogue with you all about whether you think other things should be in this relevance criteria group. The sections were right topics and terms, required ontology structure, and right topics and terms, required ontology structure. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Community endorsed selection criteria. You're hired. So I'd like to hear from anyone, everyone, whether those feel like the right criteria. Are there other use cases that you can think of that would be important that don't fit into any of those criteria when you're saying, I'm going to reject that ontology or that term because it doesn't meet my needs? Can I get volunteers from the audience to speak to that point? And we have microphones. We'll get you to speak into the microphone. And if you say your name and what you're working on, that would be great too. Show of hands, show of hands. I'm gonna pick on Gwen and Jan in the front row because they know all this stuff. So so let me ask this, because I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand yet. Can some of you tell us why you are interested in this and what you're hoping to get from it so that I can tailor to what you're interested in? Anyone? Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Pedro Maastricht University, the Netherlands. Yeah, well, I mean, it's very interesting to start to look at categorization on when to, making choices. And what is very important is, of course, you would naturally think of, the documented and what you describe as a web of nested, well-described ontologies. That's important. But in practice, I would say that's on paper. What normally we could be interested, at least on the field of digital humanities, for instance, is that if it's actually used, and sometimes what you need is a fine-grained statistics and fine-grained usage of certain terminologies, right? So how is it used? In which context is used? How many people? Is this legacy use? Perhaps was used this terminology for this context 10 years ago, but not anymore. So it's really the fine-grained statistics of the usage, because that's what makes you feel, okay, this is the standard right now. Therefore, this terminology is for me.
Thank you for that. I'm totally glad that we're recording this because I'm going to capture all that word for word and make sure it all goes into the appropriate places. What I think you've described is all of the different sections where we're seeing these options, and then even to a little more detail of not just the simple, how many hits did it get, but how many hits did it get, when and by whom and for what and for, yes. Yeah, that's deep. We're not going to discuss it at great length here, but I'm really good. Thank you. Someone else, please. Oh,
yeah. So I think this work is interesting because it actually points out a lot of issues about best practices and working with ontologies. Some issues that are not addressed is composability of ontologies, right? How would you be able to reuse a term from one ontology and terms from other ontologies to put them together to build your own as a merger? And that's actually not easy. The most common way of doing this is copy and paste in an OWL file, which is definitively not a good practice because you lose the information about the version of the ontology, the version of the concepts, and so on. I was looking at the category for relevance, and one of the things that comes to my mind when I look at right topic and terms category is that includes also quality. Quality, the quality of the ontology. Does the term or the ontology has enough metadata? Is that metadata standard and well described? I've seen that, for instance, it needs to be linked to a publication or a place where you can find a proper definition whenever you can, of course. So maybe in that section, relevance, maybe you can consider splitting this and have a quality criteria on this. And that relates to governance and best practices and so on. So I think this work is tremendously important because it raises the question on how we work together on ontologies, which we try to actually bring to the table when we did the fair semantics, but still it's a hard problem. It's like everybody has his own way of doing things. And
do you think with the existence, so you made the key point that quality is an important criteria. Do you think that people often use quality as a weed out? Do they say, well, I don't care how good the terms are, it just has to meet this level of quality?
certainly they have a threshold, right? But when you arrive on an ontology, you get a term that's just a label. There's absolutely no definition. You will discard it, right? Even if the label exists, the current practice is going to be, okay, I'm going to create my own concept with the same label, a new ID, and I put my definitions. So they will be frustrated, therefore they recreate, which creates ambiguity, and then you enter into this nightmare of having for one concept 10, 20, 100 different URIs. And at some point we need to stop that because we can resolve that as humans, but the point of the ontology is to make it machine actionable, and machines can resolve that. So we are killing ourselves.
Yeah. I think I agree about the fact that, you know, if there is a term, and we came across that when we were working on the IADOP modeling challenge, if we look for a match on a term and we arrive in an ontology that's got no definition or no context, or it's you just lose trust in it. But that being said, there are vocabularies, ontologies that might have good contact person as well. And I think knowing that somebody is actually maintaining those ontologies, and you know what kind of infrastructure is behind it as well, because some of those resources are legacy resources, and they might still be in the process of improvement. So just going directly into saying, okay, I'll create my own, without having first, you know, maybe got in touch with people who created that resource that looks below par but could be maybe improved, I think is also, you know, obviously, if you're a human being looking for information, obviously, if you're using it through software, then you just pass to the next one.
Thanks, Gwen, because that makes me wonder. So when you encounter terms where there's no definition that you would like to reuse, wouldn't it be great if you have a mechanisms to actually add that metadata on top of it and make sure that it's pushed to the ontology developers so that actually they're aware there are different additional metadata or enrichment that has been done. So it becomes like more, I would say, a community design of the ontology and the maintenance, which is, of course, raising other problems. How do you evaluate the quality of the metadata that is added, and how do you make sure that you curate and you align? But like you would do in software, right? When you do in software, you have everything in GitHub. There's someone that make a pull request. Then you have to evaluate the pull request before you accept it. So in the end, can't we use the same process that we use in software for ontology to make it better?
Thank you. Other comments about what you are looking for in something like this or in ontologies in general? I saw someone waving their hand, but unfortunately it's just to keep cool, so I don't think they really wanted to say anything. Yeah. So what I heard in those comments was anybody might use any
criteria as weed out criteria. Is there anyone, oh, by the way, I'm not able to look at the online folks, sorry. So if you have your hand raised, I'm not seeing it, but if you're online, you're welcome to just jump in the pauses. Is there anyone online who wanted to add something to the conversation? You can just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak, so. Okay. So is it fair to say then that if you had a tool that could let you evaluate all these criteria, you'd want to see that tool let you choose any criteria as a weed out and eliminate all the ontologies up front before you perform the other evaluations? So that's more or less what I'm hearing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Good. So another concrete question is there anybody in the room who has experience? Let me actually try this. How many people actually have personally had the problem of choosing terms or ontologies for the projects that they're doing? Can I just see a show of hands in the room to see how many people really have had to work with this problem? 5, 6, 7, 8. Good. Thank you very much. Have you ever cared about the detailed structures of I'm going to guess that you have cared about the detailed structure of the ontology you're choosing from the detail of your answer. Is there anybody else who has looked at it and said, the terms are there, but they're not organized in the right way? So I'm not, or it's all in one big box instead of in a structure that I really need. Let's do anybody else that has faced that. Okay, 3. Okay, thank you. So I'm aware of a few tools that can do that. BioPortal is the main one I'm aware of that can actually measure the structure. Does anyone have any other tool or method that they like to use for evaluating the ontology other than being knowledgeable about ontologies and opening it up and looking at it? Any tools in the wild that are useful now? Okay. This is one of the reasons we wanted to start this process, is because as you go through the, 100 criteria that there are, maybe 500 if you get detailed, it's hard to know across all the uses in all the countries what is available and what people are actually doing. But mostly our experience has been, it's a very anecdotal process. Depending on the person's experience and all of that, they're making it up as they go along. So that is interesting to get that feedback that there aren't other tools. Then last question in that space about the community enforced ontologies of the people who are working with ontologies now. And even if you're not working with the ontology yourself, but you're in a project or community, how many people are in a community where they are defining what the ontology has to be like, or which ontologies have to be used, or they know of communities like that? I'm actually looking for concrete experience with community restrictions on the terminology choices that you can make on your work for the community. Have you all seen that? Yeah. Do you want to talk?
I might have misunderstood your question, but if you're saying, are you after particular use cases of just to narrowing down? Because
yeah.
I know in the frame of iAdopt, I mean, it would be wonderful to have a tool that would actually, having the iAdopt framework to actually be able to target ontologies. Sorry. Target ontologies that that are applicable to the model.
I think the question I'm asking is, and that's a really good example to work with for a moment, because we've heard a little bit about iAdopt. Has the community said on a nice web page somewhere, these are the ontologies that we work with in iAdopt?
It hasn't happened yet.
but maybe you will.
But I think it will come out. Yeah,
Yeah.
there will be some leaders in,
Yeah.
you know, some.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Who else has went into that? Yeah. Would you mind speaking about it a little? Yeah.
Hello.
Go ahead, go online.
Hi. This is Group 4,
Welcome.
Governance
Ah.
and Internationalization. We are back and ready to report back.
Okay, hold that thought. I think we're shooting for the breakouts to come back in a few more minutes, but let me just collect one more response here in the room, and then we're going to go sum up for the audience. Thanks for that. Yeah, go ahead.
So my use case is not exactly what you would like to see, I guess, but we are on the way. We're hoping to be on the way. I work with the community that we call ELC, Environmental Health Language Collaborative. It's supported by National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, where I work. And it's a big problem. Data harmonization is a big problem in this space because there are multiple methods, multiple approaches, multiple terminologies. And so as we have a use case that is data harmonization use case, and they're trying to come up with a short list of terminologies or ontologies to use for the future studies. So we are not
very close.
Yeah, it's close. We're not, we're promoting, no, not more than that.
Yeah.
And we haven't finished the list yet, but we have a web page, resources for the data harmonization use case where we listed what we found useful.
Good, good. No, thank you. That's a great example. We might be in touch. Thank you. Okay, let me check. Is breakout group 2 back? Breakout group 2, Hande, are you back? Yes, I see Hande, so I think you're back. Is breakout group 3 back?
I think I kicked everybody in.
Yep. All right. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm just seeing them pop up on screen, so that's how I can tell. Good. So breakout group 2, can you summarize how things went, what you learned? I'm going to give you, let me check my watch. Yeah, let's say a minute and a half each.
All right, that's me, I think. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have been taking notes in our document that was assigned to us, and we've been mostly thinking about a little bit about what other metrics that we should be considering. Based on the matching discussion that we had earlier, we were really looking into maybe creating some other metrics looking into these matching related questions. In the reuse section, we also talked a little bit about, do we need some metrics here too? What may they be? Also, if we want to use LLMs, you know, because this is kind of a really hot topic where I am now at the ISWC, you know, how do we use that? Is there a way that we can feed our existing schemas to the LLMs? Is there a way that the LLMs can provide more context to help us choose the ontologies for use? And we're actually still taking notes and thinking as you kicked me out, I was taking notes. We're going to continue doing that. And we appreciate your feedback on that too. So we were trying to see what is popularity, what it really, and then how popularity can be mixed and matched with actual, you know, responsiveness of the ontology maintainers and ontology generators. So exciting and great to see you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hande. That sounds great. How many people did you have in your breakout?
2 people.
Okay, you were very active. Good show. Breakout room 3, Anna Maria.
Yes, here we are. And I think there was this confusion because we thought we were in the popularity. But anyway, so we work on popularity, but mostly on, we focus on the, you know, first of all, on how to define. So there was the problem on how to define popularity. And, you know, it's just how much is used, how do you kind of evaluate how it is used. And getting out the issue that popularity, sometimes it depends exactly how you define. If you define the most used looking at a certain ontology search, like NCBI, then the popularity is not always associated with the best choice you can get. and that's it's become kind of circular. The other point we were addressing was about the reuse issue, because sometimes the term with the same label are reused independently from the domain, and other time they are reused by not following the original structure of the term, but just reuse the term itself by creating a new structure. So that is kind of, we define that reusing, or we are not defining that reusing, because it's really not reusing an ontology since it's not reusing the original structure. It's that reusing the label term and maybe the definition, but recreating a different content. And the last thing that we were discussing was about the needs of putting the context. In order to help or choosing the ontology, you need to put the context. And the context could be fair in some way. And I thought that was the same thing discussed with Andy. So maybe LLM could help in that. Or and so this where I want to be quick. And we put the comment in the chat in the document under reuse, and we will continue to work on that.
Great, thank you. No, it'll be very interesting to blend the two. Breakout group 4.
Yes, so this is Asia. We have 2 other people join me, Nicole and Barbara. If you can raise your hands, or to show you. Yes. So we have a topic governance and internationalization, but we just jumped directly into internationalization topic, and we spend the whole time talking about it, which is surprising. And our conclusion, one, I just talked 3 major points, and then Nico or Barbara can add if we have time. So one is that both Nico and Barbara had a experience working on translation, terms translation. For example, there is HPO, they translate to different languages. So for translation, we need to consider how we engage a group to contribute, and then how to provide them a simple form so the people who are developing other language translation can contribute back to us. And the RDA can play a real important role here, because RDA can establish some formal collaborations with some funded groups who has the funding to sustain this kind of activities, because we cannot just only rely on vocabulary volunteers. And then other things that we really want to raise is that we have to warn the use of LLM without human or experts validation, because if we translate something wrong, which will cause harm. So please add Nico and Barbara for anything that I missed.
And it is also a problem with environment, the whole resources. So you should not always use LLMs for everything, because it should be well thought. Yeah. Costs too much resources, and the output must not always be that good. Yeah. Another point was, remember that I said it's a bit hard to find a metrics that really works for the internalization.
Yeah, the translations.
Terms towards the whole semantic resource as it.
Right. We also talked about that we should engage linguistics students, researchers, linguistic domain or language culture domain, because they are the person who understand the language shifting, but they don't know ontology. So it would be a very great chance to exchange knowledge, skills, and to get the people involved to broaden this internationalization effort, which really creating global fair data for interoperability.
Good, thank you. So just for group one, to let you all know what happened there, we had a nice discussion around the criticality of these different criteria, and I'm going to have to go back and transcribe the recording to tell you anything that happened, because it all went by. But it was really nice to get to talk to some of the people in the room here. So I want to thank everybody who participated remotely, and all of the team and all of you out there. And if you do wish to continue working with us, please don't hesitate to come visit us, sign up, fill out the Menti survey that's now on your screen if you would be so kind. And thank you again. It was really great.
Thank you to our fearless leader, John, who made this all possible. Thank you all.